The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, whatever we may think of Mr. Trump's tariff threats, whether we think they are negotiating cards or a real plan, either way, we can focus on what we can control. But the Prime Minister has lost control. He has lost control of the border. He has lost control of immigration. He has lost control of spending. And Canadians are suffering through this difficult time. Will the Prime Minister reverse his decisions to repair what he has broken? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, when I spoke with President-elect Trump last week, I told him that we and the U.S. work well together to meet the major challenges facing our citizens, whether by stimulating economic development, whether by protecting our borders, whether it be by protecting our citizens from the impact of fentanyl and other hard drugs. We will always be there to work together, and I reassure the President-elect of that. On this side of the House, we will continue to invest in Canadians and be there to support people during difficult times. For example, with the tax rebate we're offering over the next few weeks, a tax rebate the Conservatives voted against. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister gave some gifts to President Trump, doubling our debt, increasing taxes. The red tape that is preventing natural resources projects from going forward. This has pushed $500 billion net of Canadian investment to the U.S. and has created American jobs. Meanwhile, Canadians' net income, which used to be equivalent to the Americans' income, is now $20,000 less. Will the Prime Minister reverse his destructive policies and fix what is broken? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition really cared about the well-being of Canadians, he would not have opposed the tax holiday we're giving Canadians over the next few months. He would not have stood against investing in school lunch programs for 400,000 additional children throughout the country. He would not have opposed dental care, which has delivered services as of today to more than 1 million Canadians. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition only wishes to instrumentalize and benefit from the difficulties facing Canadians, rather than trying to fix these problems like we are.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, whether one thinks that President Trump's tariff threats are a negotiating tactic or a real plan, what we do know is what we can control. And the Prime Minister has lost control of everything. He's lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending and the deficit, lost control of inflation and housing costs, lost control of his own caucus. This has put Canada in an unbearably weak position. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister reverse all the damage he's done, or will he just call a carbon tax election so we can do it for him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think the Leader of the Opposition needs to reflect carefully on whether he really wants to amplify the erroneous narratives that the Americans are putting forward around, for example, our border, when less than 1% of migrants coming into the United States irregularly come from Canada, where 0.2% of fentanyl coming into the United States comes from Canada. These are things that we would all do well to stand up and say, yes, there's things we can and are working on together at our border, but amplifying these broken narratives is simply not responsible leadership.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Breaking things is not responsible, Mr. Speaker, and that's what he's been doing for 9 years. My job is not to cover that up for him. In fact, he's broken our economy. He's doubled the cost of housing, doubled the national debt, doubled trouble across our economy with higher taxes on working Canadians. He's in the process of raising taxes on investment and energy right now, while an American incoming president wants to take our jobs and our businesses. It's understandable why President Trump wants Canadian jobs to go south. But why does this Prime Minister want to help him do it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that Canadians are facing challenging moments, which is why we are stepping up to deliver for them, whether it's by delivering a tax break over the next few months that the Conservatives are totally opposed to, whether it's by delivering a national school food program that is already helping thousands of Canadians across the country that the Conservatives oppose, whether it's delivering dental care that's making a real difference in the lives of over 1 million Canadians that the Conservatives not just opposed but did everything they could do to scuttle. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader just wants to exploit the challenges Canadians are facing while we will solve them.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, he created all of those problems. And a food program that hasn't served a single meal, or a temporary tiny 10-cent tax cut on a bag of potato chips will not fix what he broke, especially considering that his next plan is to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. You can just picture President Trump calling our businesses, encouraging them to leave Canada and set up south of the border where there is no carbon tax and where other taxes are falling. Again, it's clear why the incoming American president wants to take our jobs. Why does this Prime Minister keep helping him do it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Let me say it once again, Mr. Speaker. The price on pollution puts more money back in the middle class pockets across this country than it costs them. The Canada Carbon Rebate is a check that arrives 4 times a year and helps 8 out of 10 Canadians in jurisdictions where it arrives with more money than they pay on the price of pollution. It's how we fight climate change and build a strong economy for the future while putting money in the pockets of Canadians. That is what we are doing, while the Conservative leader wants to abandon not just the environment, but the economy as well.
That's right.
L'Honourable Député.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, every day teaches us more about the twists and turns of our relationship with the Americans. And we know that the President's threats caused confusion. Was it about trade, drugs, or border security? Now, better late than never, the government is promising a detailed plan. I hope that will be budgeted as well. When will they help reassure Canadians and Quebecers about this? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we shared our immigration plan several weeks ago, and we will continue to invest to reduce the number of irregular migrants who are crossing our border in one direction or another. We have already significantly invested in staffing levels. Unlike the Conservatives, we will invest. The Conservatives cut staffing levels at the border. We will invest to protect our border security and Canadians.
L'Honourable Député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The Honourable Member. Well, we really need a plan for the future, not the past. The sooner we do, the sooner we'll realize that we're not actually talking about trade in the discussions. There are issues here about the cultural exemption, softwood lumber, aluminum, in addition to the 25% tariffs that are threatened. Will the Prime Minister reassure us that a representative designated by Quebec will be part of Team Canada and will be part of a future negotiations committee? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that in addition to speaking about the borders on Friday with the President-elect, we also spoke about trade. We talked about steel and aluminum. We talked about energy. We talked about softwood lumber. We talked about all the issues that we will be facing with the American administration. But like 4 years ago, we will defend Canadian jobs, and we will also show how we can benefit our relationship on both sides of the border by working well together. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
The last Conservative government fired 1,100 border officers. That allowed illegal guns and drugs to flow freely into our country. We are all paying the price of that callous conservative cut. I want those border officers rehired. I want thousands more recruited, and I want their mandate expanded so they can patrol the entire border. Will the Prime Minister do that?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is exactly right. Conservative cuts hurt Canadians. Conservative cuts hurt our border security. Conservative cuts just hurt the Canadian economy. That is why it is so bewildering to see the Conservative leader continuing to stand up in cuts for dental care, cuts on housing investments, cuts for the kinds of services and benefits that Canadians need, whether it's a tax break for the next few months or school food programs. The Conservatives only know how to cut. That's not how Canadians prosper.
I ask all members please not to take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
Prime Minister's inaction allow those conservative cuts to continue to hurt Canadians. Il faut embaucher.
We need to hire thousands of agents at the border, and we need to keep good Canadian jobs. Donald Trump has said that he wants to balance his budget thanks to tariffs, so he will destroy Canadian lives to cover the American deficit. It's completely inappropriate, and the Prime Minister should be clear about that. Why did the Prime Minister come back from his dinner at Mar-a-Lago with empty hands? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, indeed, the Conservative cuts at the border have harmed Canada. And that is why we are continuing to invest, and we will be there to invest even more to protect our borders. We have already taken several measures over the last few years to reduce the number of irregular arrivals, to protect our borders from American weapons and drugs. We know there is still more to do, and we will do that in partnership with the American administration, with whom we share these security priorities.